I was watching compilations of strange goals on YouTube when I suddenly saw a comment that said, "Does anyone know what happened to Bojan Krkic?"
The for what thing of whom?
And my reaction was immediate. It can't be. I remember him. He's Messi's cousin. But I kept thinking, what really happened to him? So I decided to do some research, and this is what I discovered. It all starts in Catalonia, where Bojan was born in the early 90s. Since playing with neighborhood friends, he was a goal-scoring machine. He joined La Masia, Barca's youth academy, at 8 years old, and since then, Barca knew there was something special about him.
They come from the future!
How many goals do you think he scored while he was there? Hold on, 423. And you thinking that with 12 goals in your local league, you were already a star? Bojan was not only a scoring machine, but he played as if he were already part of the first team. Stylish dribbling, cold finishes, and ball control that seemed superhuman. Coaches, the press, the fans all said the same thing. This is going to be the next Messi, and it was not an exaggeration, even the hairstyle was the same. Fun fact, Bojan and Messi are distant cousins.
This information is worth millions.
Yes, it's no joke. They share a great-great-grandfather. That family tree is full of talent, but while one became the greatest of all time, the other, well, I'll tell you now. At just 16 years old, Bojan was already representing Spain in under-17 and under-21 tournaments, and he was excelling. In the under-17 World Cup in South Korea, Bojan led Spain to the final. He scored key goals and took home the bronze ball of the tournament. Everyone was sure the next to make a breakthrough at Barca would be him, and then his big moment arrived, the debut with Barcelona's first team.
Now it's on, right?
He was barely 17 years old when he came on as a substitute in a match against Osasuna, becoming the youngest player in the club's history to debut in La Liga. It was October 2007, and that day was forever memorable. The shirt was a bit loose on him, the socks almost up to his knees, but his talent was overflowing. He didn't seem like just another teenager, he seemed like a veteran disguised as a youth, and as if that wasn't enough pressure, a few days later he debuted in the Champions League, and guess who he replaced? None other than Lionel Messi. Yes, just as you hear it, he came in for his distant cousin, the man who would change the history of soccer. Imagine being on the bench, warming up your calves, and suddenly the coach says to you, "You're in," and you come in for Messi. It's like being asked to replace the protagonist of a Marvel movie right before the most epic scene. No pressure, right? But Bojan did not back down. He played as if he did it every day. In fact, in that same season, he scored his first goal with Barcelona against Villarreal, and it wasn't just any goal. He became the youngest scorer in the club's history. Up to that point, he also scored in the Champions League against Shakhtar Donetsk, being the third youngest scorer in the tournament's history. In short, he was doing it all, and people began to believe they were witnessing the birth of a new legend. In that first season, Bojan scored 12 goals in 48 matches. For a debutant, that's unbelievable. He broke record after record. He became the youngest Barca scorer in the Champions League and even surpassed Messi in initial statistics.
This young man fills me with pride.
But that's where the story changes, because when everything was going well, he was called up to the Spanish national team for Euro 2008. Yes, the same Euro that Spain won and where their golden era began. And if you haven't subscribed yet, subscribe. If not, Zidane will take care of you. Bojan was going to be the youngest player to wear the Spanish jersey in a major tournament. Everything was ready, but Bojan said no. What? How could he say no? Who in their right mind rejects playing a Euro with Spain at its peak? The press went crazy. They labeled him arrogant, lazy, ungrateful.
That thing doesn't even have feelings.
But the truth was different, and we didn't know it until a few years later. Bojan suffered from anxiety, but not just any anxiety, not the kind that can be calmed with tea and a nap. It was a paralyzing anxiety, the kind that makes every day an internal battle, the kind that makes you feel like the world is collapsing on you just from having to go outside, with dizziness, constant nausea, shortness of breath, and a panic as real as a physical injury. While everyone was talking about talent, he was trying not to collapse inside. The worst part is that this happened in 2008, a time when mental health in sports was not taken seriously. Nobody talked about the issue. In the locker rooms, anxiety symptoms were seen as a lack of character, weakness, or simple laziness. And in the world of football, where they teach you to be strong, to endure, to keep quiet, and keep playing, talking about what you felt inside was almost an act of betrayal. That's why when Bojan declined the call-up to the European Championship, no one wanted to hear his reason. For the press, it was a scandal. For the fans, a disappointment. For his teammates, a mystery. But for him, it was a vital necessity. Protecting himself was his only way to keep going. The rejection was brutal. It wasn't just a wave of negative comments on social media, although at that time Twitter was just taking off. It was a complete media avalanche. The headlines of the main sports newspapers in Spain labeled him immature, irresponsible, and even a traitor to the country. Sports talk shows attacked him mercilessly every night. Some former players publicly criticized him, saying that it was an opportunity any young person would kill to have. Even inside the locker room, there were uncomfortable looks and comments that heightened the tension. All of that fell on a youngster of just 17 years. At that age, you and I were just getting out of high school, learning to differentiate between taxes and tips, and he had to carry the emotional weight of a disappointed country, an angry fan base, and media looking for culprits. All because of a decision that was not due to a lack of commitment, but rather to try to protect his mental health. Bojan did not refuse out of whim, but because his body and mind told him he could not go on. But at that time, nobody wanted to understand that.
It's that.
Despite that, Bojan stayed at Barca for several more seasons, but he was almost always a substitute. Why? Because he was competing against stars from another planet. Messi, Eto'o, Ibrahimovic, David Villa. I mean, what chances did he have? Every time he came on, he felt he had to do magic to be considered, and that, for someone with anxiety, is brutal pressure. He tried everything. He went to Roma, to Milan, to Ajax, but he never quite fit in. Every time he seemed to be getting back on track, something happened. Injuries, changes of coach, lack of confidence. At Stoke City in England, he had a good start. Goals, minutes, affection from the fans. It seemed he had finally found his place, but then ligament tear. A serious injury that left him out for months, and from then on, his career was an emotional roller coaster with different teams. He went through Germany, through the MLS with the Montreal Impact, and through Japan, where he played alongside Iniesta at Vissel Kobe. There, at least, he was able to enjoy football without so much pressure, in a more relaxed environment away from the European media circus. In 2023, Bojan announced his retirement from professional football. There was no press conference with tears, no stadium full of people chanting his name, no tributes with emotional videos. It was something intimate, discreet, as he always was. He published a clear message without embellishments. Football had given him unique moments, fulfilled dreams, but it had also taken away his health, tranquility, and part of his youth. The most admirable part of that farewell was that Bojan decided to speak with total honesty about his greatest rival off the field, anxiety. He shared how he lived for years with that invisible pressure accompanying him in every game, every training session, every trip. He explained that he often felt alone, misunderstood, that there were days he couldn't get out of bed, that the weight of being the new global soccer star gradually broke him down. And that act of vulnerability in a sport where unbreakable strength is still demanded was perhaps the bravest thing in his career. He put into words what thousands of young athletes feel but do not dare to say. With that gesture, Bojan not only closed his chapter as a professional footballer, but also opened a door to talk about mental health in an environment where it is still so hard to do so.
Damn, what a great story, man. I got emotional and everything, dude. What an epic ending, right? It was really, really good.
The next time you hear the name Bojan Krkic, don't remember him as the one who promised and didn't deliver. Remember the boy who made history at 17, who was brave enough to say, "I can't," and who opened the door for many other players today to speak without fear. And if you liked Bojan's story, then you can't miss the one about the boy who was rejected by Real Madrid and is now worth over 120 million euros and is the soul of Barcelona. Click here, see you there.